someone asked me, how could I pay it forward to people of color? And I said, this is how you do it. What you're doing right now. I said, you're talking to somebody of color. Don't look for the expansive, I want to reach 1,000 people by donating. Start with the people you know. Give them resources to things that you know. And then you will empower them to pay it forward to people that they know.
It all begins by understanding the mind.
I want to be happy now. I don't care about the future. I want to be happy right now.
You are not alone. You are never, ever, ever alone in this.
It's helped my voice grow and given me freedom to be creative on my own.
I'm Christina Barcy. Welcome to Be Bold, Begin, a podcast dedicated to you, the creative, the healer, and the innovator. The topics and conversations we have here are designed to help you discover what might be getting in your way and offer you tools, techniques, and guidance to move through them.
I live in the imposter's body more than I live in my own body. I don't have to feel like I don't deserve this.
This is where creativity and healing intersect.
If you decide to be bold and begin, you have the opportunity to feel humbled and empowered. I totally believe that.
I'm a certified Kaizen Muse creativity coach, a certified Reiki energy healer, and an entrepreneur, artist, and presenter. I will share with you my experiences, my proven tools and techniques that helped me and my clients and loved ones shift and expand in the areas they most desired. This is a gentle and open space where you will hear how others are being bold to encourage you to begin your own journey or expand the one you're on. This is Be Bold Begin. Hi, and welcome back to Be Bold Begin, the podcast designed to help you find your purpose and unblock the blocks with creative tips and tools. And I'm your host, Christina Barcy. And for the past few weeks, we've been talking about authenticity and our related fears to being our authentic selves. And it made perfect sense for me to bring on a good friend of mine who has been on a journey of authenticity for a little while now and has leaned in further after the passing of his father and has built an entire platform to talk about it and to find ways to be kinder to ourselves and others as we go along on this journey of seeking authenticity. His name is Brandon Wade, and his platform is called Pay It Forward. And I found a really great excerpt. It's by Bryant and Stratford College, which they published a blog about the meaning of Pay It Forward, and I just wanted to read a little excerpt from it. The Pay It Forward movement is not a new concept. According to Wikipedia, it dates all the way back to 317 BC, where it was used as a key plot concept for a play in ancient Athens. There are small documented events of the Pay It Forward notion throughout history. The simplest way to define pay it forward is that when someone does something for you, instead of paying that person back directly, you pass it on to another person instead. And one of the easiest examples of this is buying a coffee for the person in line behind you at the coffee shop, and then they buy a coffee for the person behind them, and so on and so on. And what is the point of all of this? Why do so many people live their lives according to the pay it forward principle? Well, it has been proven that acts of kindness build exponentially in a community, and because people believe that one good deed deserves another. So here is my friend, Brandon Wade. Welcome.
It is great to be on here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yay, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, we can finally get to talk about some of these really authentic, really meaningful topics. And, I love your show, and I'm really just happy to be on. So, we'll see what we come up with.
Yay, I'm excited. I'm so glad to have you on. I've asked you for a little time now, and I think now's the right time, though. So
yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, I'm actually glad we waited because you fit right into the topic I moved into recently. I feel like everything I talk about here is essentially about being authentic. It's at the core, but talking about it in a way very directly is a little different. And
yeah, when you told me that you were doing a subject on authenticity, I was like, that is fantastic, because that is not only my lane, that's literally what I'm doing right now. Like, that's my whole purpose. So I was like, thank you. Like, this is perfect alignment.
So good. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about how Brandon and I know each other and how we met. So we met while I was working to capture an event for a podcasting client. And Brandon was suggested to volunteer to be on my team that day. And of course, he did a fantastic job. He was a great interviewer and really helped me do what I needed to do and capture what I needed to capture. And of course, we hit it off pretty much immediately, I think.
Yep. Yeah. It was pretty much off that day.
Yeah. And then we kind of got in trouble for chatting a lot on the sidelines.
Yeah. You know what though? That was facts. That did happen.
We did get shushed. We got shushed by the event directors, and I realized that we also had a very similar sense of humor at the time, and that's probably the laughing, I think, is what got us shushed.
I think that was it. Like once I started to think about it too when we were doing our production, I was just like, I probably shouldn't be laughing or doing it this much in a professional setting.
Right. Probably not the best look for me on the first day on the job with my brand new client.
Right.
But I don't know. I knew it was worth it. I knew that it would be fine because after that we forged a nice friendship over DMs on Instagram.
Yeah, right.
And I got to really learn more about you.
Yeah, it was one of those, I guess you'd say expected but unexpected friendships, where you just know that you resonate with somebody and, you're not really concerned about culture lines or anything like that. You just know that the person instinctually is probably going to get you and understand you. And I just felt like we clicked, and I really vibed with your sense of wanting to be open and real about who you were. And I was just like, yeah, we're definitely going to be friends. And I've always appreciated that.
I love that. Thank you for that. But through that process, I got to really learn more about you and your journey and what you're working on. And we talk about authenticity a lot. And I learned that you had a radio show, and that's now a podcast. And we're going to put all of that in the show notes for the listener there. And you can click on it and listen and check it out. And it's really, really honest, raw, real experiences that you're sharing there. And so I think that's awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's valuable and it's transparent, and I love when people are transparent because it's truth. It's like helps us all normalize. It helps us see ourselves for what it is, and that it's okay. That you're not the only one, and all of that stuff is so important.
Yeah, especially that understanding that it's okay to be wherever you are. And that's one reason, like you said, I love transparency, and I thought about that and I said, well, yeah, that's probably what was going to draw us together. I'm a believer that everybody kind of resonates with the people that we're supposed to be connected with at that time. And so wherever it is on your journey, your friends kind of supposed to kind of connect you with that. And so when I saw that we were on that same kind of tip about being transparent, I was like, oh, this is somebody that not only can I gain something from, that maybe we'll help each other. So I was really hype about it.
Oh, definitely. Same here. It's really heartwarming whenever we do get to exchange words, and it does feel open. It always feels rich and full in terms of depth and all of that, and that's my lane. So, so on that note, Brandon, can you tell us what your definition of Pay It Forward is, as well as what inspired you to create that specific platform?
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite stories to tell. I guess I can say I inherited it from my dad. My dad was always a storyteller, and he always had people fascinated with his stories. And I feel the same way about the way that I tell my stories. And so you guys will be a good judge of that, whether I'm a good storyteller or not. But Pay It Forward, to elaborate on what it means to me, it is very similar to the definition you gave and the person gave about one person being in line with someone else, and before you get up to the counter, you find out that the coffee or whatever has already been paid for, and then they say at the counter, well, all the person wants you to do is pay it forward to someone else. There's something about the act of inspiration that comes when something's done for you that you didn't ask for or expect. And I know what that feeling is like, having experienced some things through my life. And I've even had some meals be paid for me in places. There was some times where I was a student, and, I was, as a student, sometimes in my life I'm in a better place now, but I was barely getting by in just, having to provide and do food and stuff like that. And there was one time I was sitting down to eat breakfast just because I decided that I was going to do it, and I was budgeting what I had, and I went and they gave me the receipt, and I said, all right, I'll go on and do this. And they said, oh no, so your food was already paid for. And I was like, what? And they were just like, yeah, your food's already paid for. It said the woman that was in the back, she saw you and she paid for your food and she just left. And I was stunned.
Wow. And
I thought about the feeling that I felt from an action like that. Now, my food maybe only costed, $13 or $14. But it wasn't about the food. It was about the action. It was about the intent. And the intent of paying it forward reaches a lot farther than the action. What you do with $10 and paying it forward to somebody they might remember that for the rest of their lives. And it's the intent that comes behind paying something forward, and it's an inspiration. Like the quote says that, one good deed deserves another. It's something about the momentum that comes with that. So in paying it forward, meaning that to me, I can honestly say that that's not how Pay It Forward started for me. Pay It Forward, in essence, started as kind of a gimmick thing that I did. It was a challenge for me in one of my ending years at PCC, which is where I go to school, is Pasadena City College. Is in my ending year of going there. My dad was in the middle of stage 4 cancer, and it was pretty likely that he was going to pass away. And I remember looking for something to challenge myself because I just couldn't be around the house. He was in a lot of pain. He was doing his best to not really show how much pain he was in, but I could just tell, and I just really didn't want to be around the house all the time. So I was looking for things to challenge myself, and so I decided to take on a radio show because at PCC, they have a online radio station, and it's like a fully equipped radio station, so we get a chance as students to do our own radio show after we've gained enough experience. So I said, you know what? Let me just find something that would be interesting. The main thing that came to mind was I said, what could I talk about for an hour? If no one was on the show with me, if it was just me, what could I talk about for an hour? And what came to me was positivity. And I said, okay, great. What do I want to call it? I'm a person who likes creative names. So I was like, well, I don't want to just do something like Positivity Hour with Brandon. That's not creative at all. And I'm like, I don't want to do anything like that and do something cheap. I said, I want to do something that is going to I'm going to feel good about it being attached to me. And then the name just came to me, Pay It Forward. And I was like, oh, I can talk about positive things because people are not talking about positive things. I can talk about positive things people are doing around the school, and that'll be my way of paying it forward to the school for all the things that they've done for me.
Oh, wow. That's that's really rooted in gratitude.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny because that's the first iteration of why I started Pay It Forward. But the authenticity journey didn't really start until after my dad died. I started Pay It Forward, I think, in January of 2019. I believe when I started Pay It Forward. And I started as it was a show on Lancer Radio Network, which is the school's radio station. And so it was rooted in gratitude. I was speaking nothing but just pure positivity. I was finding people online, people that wanted to be involved. I had some call-in guests. I had some really good guests around the school. I was even able to interview our dean that had just transferred over for the TVR department. Ironically, is who was the person that connected me with you, our dean, Liesl Reinhardt, or Liesl Reinhardt. She gets super mad when she don't like.
Shout out to Liesl.
Shout out to Liesl. She's
old mentor as well. My mentor.
She's made
when
sure
I was
to
in community college.
Yeah. Yeah. And she connected us after I interviewed her, and we had a really good conversation. And Pay It Forward was just about me promoting positivity. Whoever was positive around the school, I wanted to tell everybody about it. And it was great. And I was having this thing. But I found myself deep down not really feeling connected with myself. Even though I was talking a lot of positivity, a lot of gratitude, I would have this rush of energy for an hour, and then I would just feel like, okay, you talked about positivity for an hour, but your dad's still dying. And all the things I was doing was just trying to distract myself. Then in mid-April, he finally died. And I suddenly realized that I didn't have the same energy to carry Pay It Forward as I did before, doing the same things I did. I wasn't interested in just doing gimmicks and things like that. And I found out that a lot of what I was doing, as well-intentioned as it wasn't as authentic as I thought it was. It was just a way that I was coping, and I started to have to be honest about that. So as time began to transpire, as more time began to pass, I started to think, well, what could I really continue to talk about without being fake and dishonoring my journey? So it became less about positivity, and then it started to become more about authenticity. But the root still became the same. Taking my authentic journey, paying it forward to the people. And the main question I began to ask myself was, what do I have to give people if I don't have positivity to give them? Because that's what I was giving people before. And I'm just like, well, what do I have? I said, I don't think they want to hear about me feeling sad and upset and confused and all of the things that come with someone dying in your life. I don't think they want to hear about that. And it occurred to me that that's probably exactly what they want to hear. Because,
so how did you, sorry to interrupt here, but
no worries.
How did you make that realization? Because my next question was actually going to ask you this, what the pivotal moment was for you and what made you go basically switch from positivity to authenticity. What was it that helped you understand that that is exactly what people wanted to hear?
That is a good question. I cannot define the exact day that I had this pivotal moment, but I know that it was sometime in the May before my first season of Pay It Forward ended. And I think maybe as I was going into the summer, I started to think about closing out the show and what I was going to do, because I was still focused on just trying to get guests and still kind of trying to keep the same positive energy. And so, no, actually it wasn't around May. It was after the summer, and I decided that I was going to go back, and I started to think about what I really wanted to do in my life. My dad was a defining factor in my life. I had never known any days without my dad. And so now that he was gone, I was like, well, what do I actually want to do with my life? Like, what do I actually want to do? And I had been taking full-time classes just because the pressure was on me to take full-time classes. But now I didn't have that pressure anymore. And I was like, what do I want to do?
So was it coming from your dad to have a full schedule and to pursue something specific?
In many ways, yes.
Was there a lift of, it sounds almost like there was some freedom.
There was freedom. My dad was like a weight on my shoulder. There were a lot of expectations that I have had throughout my life, and pretty much most of them came from my dad. He expected me to do this. He expected me to be the greatest at whatever I did, and he expected me to... It was all about his expectations. And so he expected me to be going full time to school, because that was the only reason he wasn't hounding me about having a job, was because I was going to school full time.
Okay, I see. Yeah. And we're going to dig in further about that exact relationship, about expectation with you and your father. Just
to clarify this, though, it was at the end of summer that I decided I would be robbing myself to do a show that is not going to touch me anymore. And it was right around August, like the end of August, and I was like, I want to do radio. I still want to do Pay It Forward. And I want to do it in a way that's not going to feel constrained. That's not going to feel like I have to follow a certain topic. I want to not create a persona. I want to bring myself into this show.
And you were discovering yourself in the process.
Yes, and I was discovering, absolutely. And I didn't want to lie. I felt like if I had continued along that path of just speaking about positivity, it would have been dishonest. And I gave myself the opportunity at that moment. I said, you know what, I want to do this. I'm going to try it, because if I try it and no one's interested in listening, at least I know that I've done something that is truly coming from my heart. There's no way that I'll have any regrets about sharing anything that's from my heart. And if people don't listen to that, then I'm okay with that, because I know I was sharing from an authentic place.
Yes, it seemed like it was a really, like, that sounds like the pivotal moment to me, like this realization of understanding that you get to finally speak from your voice and from a place that matters to you, and it may or may not resonate, and that's okay. And the reality is that it will, when you speak from that place, it will. And you were trusting that. And it also sounds to me, and we can talk about this, correct me if I'm wrong, but like that, it almost sounds like you discovered that honesty and truth in your heart is a core value of yours, of something that it's very important that you maybe weren't able to exercise before this.
That's very accurate, actually. It was my first realization of something that this year I've actually done some work around that and discovered that that is my absolute number one core value. I've literally written it down. It's authenticity.
Wow.
It's my number one core value. It's the value that I desire out of every relationship I have. It's the number one value I desire in myself. But that was probably the pivotal moment that I realized that.
Mm-hmm. And you got to speak as yourself. What did that feel like the first time you did that?
You know, it felt a bit, it did feel scary at first. But then I started to feel wider, in a sense. I started to feel less constrained. I started to feel like Pay It Forward was my show, and that I wasn't someone hosting Pay It Forward.
It was ownership around that.
Yes, it was an actual sense of ownership around my show, and that's how I feel now, is that it's a platform, and it's my platform and my show. And I did not feel that prior to this point. Before, it was just like, I'm someone who is hosting a show on Lancer Radio, and that show happens to be called Pay It Forward. And at this point, Pay It Forward is my show and a personal part of my platform and my journey.
And I think you've done a really good job in aligning that for others, because I very easily and immediately associate it with you and who you are. And it's very,
that's good.
In a way that's like, people talk about branding as if it's a dirty word, like marketing and branding. But at the end of the day, all that is just aligning all of your things into something that feels like, especially if it's coming from a core, right? A core value. Then you're just like lining things up to be like, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. That's what branding is.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely,
that's what Brandon is.
Branding. We are on the right track already. We started on the right track. We had the first 5 letters down.
Yeah, you're on your way already. Yeah, but truly, like it's very easy to assimilate those two things, you and Pay It Forward. To me, it's like I can't walk around and see that phrase and not think of you.
That means a lot, and that means that the authenticity that my relationship with God and all these things has connected with is showing, and it's starting to present itself now, and that's really good, because when I started out, that's the scary thing about authenticity, is you go, holy crap, what am I doing? This is not what we do, and you normally will think that. I know that I for sure have thought, this is absolutely not. This can't possibly work. And then it works, and I'm like, it worked. But it's like rearranging the order. The order is what means the most to me first, and how does that affect others, as opposed to how does it affect others, and then what does it mean to me? I
love that, because it is that the check-in with yourself is so important. Ourselves, I should say, like what's going on inside, because I really do believe that if we're listening to that truth inside of us, that intuitive place that our body knows and our gut knows and our inspiration knows, and all of that works together.
Yeah.
And if we pay attention to that, I have a really hard time believing anything can go wrong. You might trip and fall or make mistakes, or I should say we or I might trip and fall and make mistakes and do things that feel uncomfortable, sometimes painful, sometimes, they feel tragic. But at the end of the day, every journey I've been on where it came from that place ended up being the most aligned, best thing, expansive thing, successful thing I've ever done, that I can look back on and feel like zero regret. And even the quote unquote mistakes, which I kind of don't believe in mistakes, but
I completely agree with that. And especially about when you know that you've done it from that authentic place, that place of abundance inside of you. And there's no regrets about having done something like that.
And it's going to resonate. And even like you said, even if it only resonates with you, people don't talk about this, I don't think. Even if you're the only one that the message resonates with, you're someone of value.
Yeah.
Maybe that's enough.
Yeah. Maybe that's enough.
So I want to touch on what you've talked about with your father, because you mentioned that as a pivotal moment, which it really was, and it must have been a huge experience, and I'm sure you're still processing, and probably will, as we do with big things like that, for a while. I know he was a big influence on your life, and also how we learn and navigate through life we get from our parents. And I know for you, your father was a big influence in that way as well, about how you walked through life at times. I would love for you to talk about that experience and how it relates to expectations, which you mentioned earlier as a child, and how that relates to being talented, because that's something that I know you want to that's important to talk about, and also the expectations in Black families, which is extremely high pressure, high stress, and a lot less, if not any, room for error. I'd love for you to explain what it was like growing up for you with that level of expectation. And I'm going to throw in a disclaimer here, because before you answer that, I just think I need to say this for my white community, which is that our Black friends are not responsible to explain that experience to us. The question that I'm asking is based on a conversation that you and I had, Brandon, that came up in context of this personal growth journey of yours, and you agreed to share it here for us again. Thank you for doing that and to give context to your story. So that being said, this space and this conversation can be a resource and can be a way for people to learn more without putting the responsibility on the people that we know in our lives to do it for us. And obviously, if someone is sharing with you, just be a good listener and let that be what it is. And I'm trusting that people that are listening right now know the difference and know what I'm trying to say and what I mean by that. But I do think it's important to say, especially with awareness being raised at the moment for the first time for some people. So I just want to say that. Again, do you mind sharing what it was like growing up?
Absolutely. I'm happy to share, and I will just consider this a way that I can pay it forward to people for the sake of solidarity's purposes. I've always been somebody that believes that regardless of the race and gender that we all experience, there are some commonalities that connect us all. And I've seen that over time, but there are some things that are fundamental differences. And I think that we're all just starting to discover that there are fundamental differences between each and every person, and especially between the disparity of race. And there is a difference. Yes. And so I'd be happy to explain that, because just for the sake of solidarity, because there's just some things that we often just miss and we don't understand. So, and then also I like to talk about me, you feel me? Like, me is one of my favorite subjects out there. So
let's
I'm
be
like,
real.
you know, since we talking about me, I mean, shoot, let's do it.
I mean, it's not part of your journey, you know?
I mean, it is a part of my journey. So
exactly. That's my point. Like, it's part of your story. So it's part of your story. And
if it happens to serve the benefit of solidarity between the people, then hey, let's do it.
All right.
So my dad was he cared very much in my life, and I always will give him credit for being a father and being a parent. He was a very present parent in a lot of ways, and he was very reliable and very trustworthy in a lot of ways, but he was also a very hard man. He was not somebody that he took the way. What happened really is that I grew up an only child. Mm-hmm. And because I was an only child, I had all the expectations of my family placed upon me, which meant my dad saw me as the way that he could prove to himself and to his family that he was not a failure. So he saw me as his redeeming moment, his shining star. I was his greatest success to him. And so he felt a sense of unhealthy ownership in my life. And he felt that he needed to cultivate my skill sets in life more than he needed to express love to me in the way that I needed. He felt that it was more important for me to survive than for me to be loved. And he was just like, if you can survive, I want to make sure my son can survive everything, and he can be talented, he can figure out the rest on his own. And that was just kind of his philosophy about things. What happened over time was, as a young child, I started to realize that I had a lot of talents. And, you know, at the expense of kind of, you can say that it kind of sounds pretentious, but I have a lot of talents. I can't sometimes feel like I don't barely even go another month or so without discovering something else that I learned how to do, and I'm just like, oh, I guess I can do that too. And people are like, well, why are you not grateful for that? First of all, talents are fantastic. They're amazing, but they also come with responsibility.
They can.
There's also a level that they can very well come with a level of accountability that comes for each and every talent that you get. And the more talented you are, in many cases, people recognize you less for the person you are and more for the talent that you have. Which is why you have. Can
you dig into that a little bit? And
yeah. And so I will dig in that in my personal life. As a child, I found myself able to act, and I was a talented actor even as like a little boy, and I had like no fear as a little boy going on stage and doing performances and stuff like that. And even at my elementary school, people would like, applaud, and I'd have like all the audiences applauding and stuff for the little plays and stuff that I would do. And my dad was always kind of obsessed with the idea of me being successful. And as a kid, it ended up panning out into me being in the professional acting world. I had gotten involved in it. I started to make money in that world, but what happened is my dad began to start putting a lot of pressure and expectations on me. So he started to press me to be great, and he pressed me really hard. He would pick me up, you know, for times with auditions and stuff like that, and then he would press me to be great. He would always, he would, you know, yell at me about how I needed to do this right, how I needed to do that right, and how I'd better get it right when I went in there, and how I'd better make sure that I did this and I did that. And he would, you know, he'd be more involved in my process than I was. And there was a particular point in which I was picked to be young Simba in The Lion King. And
the Broadway show, The Lion King.
As in the Broadway show, The Lion King, to clarify. As in the one that goes on tour, as in I have seen the inside of the Pantages, and it is a whole lot bigger than people think it is.
Wow.
And it's big enough for you to get lost in. And also, as in, I can still sing I Just Can't Wait to Be King as of today, because we had to sing it thousands of times. It's very interesting because that particular play bothered me as a child, because my worst fear as a kid was seeing my dad die. And I was terrified of that. And I remember when the linchpin of the entire movie, show, everything is Simba trying to wake Mufasa up after Mufasa gets killed by Scar. Mm-hmm. And it's the linchpin of everything. So when they picked me to do that scene, they were basically saying that as if I'm going to be young Simba, I'm going to have to relive that scene every time I get up there, hundreds of times, in front of hundreds of people, all the time, traveling around the world, reliving this scene. I was terrified of doing that. I hated the idea, and I did everything I could to sabotage myself being picked. And my dad was over the moon at the idea that I could be young Simba in The Lion King. And I tried to tell him through the years, Dad, I really don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this. And all I wanted was my parents to say, hey, son, we just want to let you know that no matter what is going on in your life, or whatever you feel is going on, we care more about you than we do about the play. And I tried to explain it to my dad even as a kid, and I said, Dad, I really don't want to do this because I've always felt afraid of you dying. And his response was, well, boy, it ain't like I'm going to be dead. I'm going to be in the audience, so you know I'm not going to be dead. I don't really see what the problem is. I didn't end up fully getting picked, and the only reason I didn't get picked was because my parents couldn't afford to go on tour. I was the third of one of three people that they had already pre-decided, and the woman had decided on me. Mm-hmm. She just wanted me to make sure that my parents could afford to go on tour, and they couldn't, so they didn't pick me. And I remember just begging, whatever God was out there, don't let them pick me. And when I finally sat aside, I remember trying to explain it to my mom, trying to explain it to everybody, and they were just like, I don't see the problem. You know, it's The Lion King. You know, you can get over an experience like that and just be rich, be successful. And I remember being in the car with my dad, and this was the linchpin moment. I was like with my dad, and he was arguing with me about something involving acting. And I suddenly looked at him. I said, this isn't even about me, is it? And this is like 12 years old. I said, this isn't about me. This is about you. And he said, you are goddamn right it is. It is about me. And he looked me dead in my eye and said, this is about me. Not talking about, he's talking about himself. He said, this is about him. This is about his success. He said, do you know what it means for me to be able to see my son as an actor on TV? Because I grew up in a world where there were no black people on TV. There were no black kids on TV. It was a pipe dream for me to even think that there would be black kids on TV. And I get to see my own son on TV? This is about me. And it broke my heart that day that my dad was so focused on a trauma that he had experienced that he was unable to see his son in that moment. All he saw was an opportunity to prove to his family, and even to a greater extent, the generational trauma in his life, that he was worth something.
Right.
This is what we talk about, what I talk about when I say that there are unspoken pressures. And I want to say this to anybody that is interested in solidarity, and I mean this with respect. Every person experiences trauma in their life. Every person's trauma is valuable. Every person has experienced hardship. But there is a certain level of hardship that comes within black families that is ingrained, that will always be, no matter how much hardship you have experienced, a black child in your same situation will experience 2 to 3 times as much as you do, simply because of the generational trauma that has been passed down within his or her life. My dad, in many cases, I can tell you that my dad prepared me for the reality that not if, but when I would be experiencing some form of racism. There was a reality that I had to know how to behave myself around cops because they weren't, according to him, my friends, and they could not be my friends. My dad would oftentimes tell me stories about how he couldn't even drive in Beverly Hills as a young kid in the 60s because he would get pulled over just for being black. So for him, this was a reality. And for me, he was trying to make sure that I understood the world that I was going to live in. And for him, it took priority that me, as a young black kid, would survive in this world as opposed to actually living life. And that is a fundamental difference between myself and a member of a community that is not black or a person of color.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And
Yeah.
for shining some light on your story and the insight to your transformation that you're still experiencing now and the transformations that led up to this one. I think it's really important to talk about. And I love that you're in this sort of, to me, you're in an inspirational space. Like what you're doing is inspiring people and showing.
Well, it feels really good to hear.
You're definitely doing that. And you're making space, you're making room, and you're making room for conversations like this. You're making room for me. You're making room for people who maybe have never heard someone talk about this stuff so in such a raw way. I mean, and I mean that well. Raw can sound weird, but
no, I get where you're coming from. You talking about vulnerable and real. I get where you're coming from.
It's really honest.
Yeah.
And sometimes you talk when you're really in an uncomfortable moment, and that's hard to do. I don't know that I don't know that I'm brave enough yet to even do that. and it's very brave. It really is.
Thank you.
Okay. So all that said, can you share with us something that, if someone wants to discover themselves or lean into this authenticity or their own truth, how would they begin, or what has really worked for you? What's a practice that you can share?
That's what's up. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a really good one. The main thing that I started doing, because again, I discovered most of this stuff on my own just by taking time to be self-aware. So what has worked for me, especially with feeling, is I will sit maybe with myself on a bed. Now, sometimes I'll set a timer. It might even be for 30 seconds. It might be for 1 minute or whatever. And I will do my utmost to allow whatever feelings are in my body to show up.
Wow.
So whatever those feelings are, if I'm feeling anxious and my first move is to, let me go grab some candy or something like that to dull the feeling. My first move is I'll say, before I do that, I'm going to set the timer for 1 minute, and I'm going to allow myself to feel whatever feelings come up. Even if I can't feel them without judgment, I'll let myself feel them and try to identify them. Where is it in the body? Is it in my lower body? Is it like a burning feeling? Is it a tanginess in my mouth? What is it? That is my main practice for sitting with my feelings, and it doesn't have to be that long, but just the awareness helps a lot with just identifying your feelings.
That is huge. That's such a great exercise.
Thank you. And again, that's one of those things that I just figured it out. I just was like, you know what? This might be a thing that works, and let me try that.
And the fact that you discovered that by yourself on your own, and you're so young. Can I share your age?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
You just turned 30.
Yes.
And you've been doing, I met you before, so 29, I think.
Yeah, I think I was maybe 28 or 29 when we met.
Yeah. And to see the level of work you're doing on your own is so impressive, and you're just way ahead of the game. And on top of that, like, no judgment, but I think in my experience or my own observation, men tend to find it a little bit later.
That's true.
If they're looking, and
that's true.
And it's just really impressive that you're doing this kind of work for yourself and essentially for others. You doing this is paying it forward.
Yes, and that's actually then just to make everything, try to wrap everything up in a package, just simply because I said a lot of things. I was asked once, what's most important for me? Like someone asked me, how could I pay it forward to people of color? And I said, this is how you do it. What you're doing right now. I said, you're talking to somebody of color. Don't look for the expansive, I want to reach 1,000 people by donating. Start with the people you know. Give them resources to things that you know. And then you will empower them to pay it forward to people that they know.
Yeah.
Everything I do, I don't have to seek other black people to do this. Other black people will see me doing this, and then they will know and begin to understand that there's another way, that they don't have to follow the generational patterns that have been, and it will empower people to do so. I don't have to do anything to pay it forward other than be my most authentic self and choose to give it. And that's the whole message. That's the story.
Oh, I love that. That was such a great note to end on. Thank you for that. That was just so succinct and lovely and exactly. I love that. I love everything about that. I'm not going to say anything more other than what's next for you, and are you working on anything?
So right now I'm doing a lot of refining. I'm doing some refining of my show. I found my rhythm, and mostly I've been just doing my show. I feel like I have the time now to really dig deep. So mostly it's just been emotional work, working on my show, and I involve myself with different areas. There are some external post-production related projects. I do post-production too. So I do
for video, right?
editing. Video editing. I do video editing, and I have a ministry that I work with. It's not really a religious ministry, but it's just people that pray. And so sometimes we do calls where we just pray for an hour, and it's people of all races and all colors and stuff. So we have we just call it the Real Prayer Movement, and I'm just a part of that. So that's something that I do on the side. It's just a Zoom call, and it goes Monday through Fridays. It's through it's a nighttime call from like 10 to 11, and anybody is welcome. It doesn't really matter whatever your race, religion, faith. Has no matter. People coming together to pray.
Okay.
So
very cool.
Yeah, it's from 10 to 11, and I do that kind of like as a side thing. But mostly in my personal life, I've been focusing on what am I going to do with the talents that I've been given and the insight and self-awareness that I've been given. What am I going to do with that? And so the main thing is I want to do is pay it forward. So we'll see where that goes from there. But mostly it's been about the show.
I love it. That's great. And where can people find you?
So you guys can find me on Instagram. I post pretty often at Pay It Forward Radio. My show is also Pay It Forward Radio. So you can also find me at Pay It Forward Radio. I'm on Apple Music. I'm on Spotify. I'm on Pandora. I'm on pretty much all of the main streaming sites. You can also find me streaming live. There's a link in my bio on my Instagram page. My friend has an internet radio website, and it's called Edom Rocks Radio, and he has an internet radio website, so he streams his shows and different music, and my show is also streaming on there. Nice. So that link is in the bio of my Instagram, and pretty much anytime you look up Brandon Wade or Pay It Forward Brandon Wade, you'll probably find me. There's another Brandon Wade that owns a dating website, and he's Asian, and it's not me.
I saw that.
That is a dude that does seeking arrangements, and I promise you that's not me. I mean, I respect him for his grind, but that's not me.
I saw that, and I was like, oh, this guy is all over the web.
He is definitely out there, and I say I can't knock your hustle, big dog, but that's not me. But so you'll see my face just pretty much on anything that is related to Pay It Forward. So that's pretty much what I'm doing. But this has been a great experience.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was one of the best conversations. I appreciate you.
Yeah. I'm so happy that you invited me on here and that you were talking about this topic. I said you wanted to talk about authenticity, man. I could have gone another hour. So I appreciate you for taking the time out.
Thank you, Brandon.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for listening to People Begin. We hope that these episodes inspire and empower you to take your next steps in your own intuitive journey towards a life or business that feels clear, authentic, and aligned. And if you're ready for more tools and guidance like courses and free events, then I'd love to invite you to my new Intuitive Creators Academy and Collective. It's free to join. Just follow the link in the show notes and remember to DM me once you get there to receive a special gift for being a listener of People Begin. I'll look forward to seeing you there.